Yesterday I had a conversation with a colleague that I cannot stop thinking about. She has prediabetes. Her mother, actually a nurse, died from complications of diabetes, and she had an aunt that died from diabetes as well. And at one point she said something that I hear constantly. Maybe it's just my genes. Maybe that's just my destiny. Or she said, in fact, it is just my genes. And that belief that diabetes is just inevitable because it runs in your family is one of the most dangerous myths that I encounter. Not because genes are not important, because they are, but because it's believing that it's inevitable makes people less likely to do the things that really can make a difference. And we really can make a difference. So today I want to share 5 things that matter far more than most people realize when it comes to insulin resistance, prediabetes, and long-term metabolic health. And surprisingly, protein is not on the top of the list. So stay with me to the end, because number 5 is probably the one that almost nobody talks about, and it may be the biggest missing piece in the current conversation around metabolic health. So I'm Dr. Jen. I help women and families reverse prediabetes using joyful medicine, what I like to call joyful medicine. It's where evidence-based lifestyle medicine meets joy, weight inclusivity, and real life. So let's get into it. So yes, genes absolutely are important. We know, right, that there is a concordance. When family members have diabetes, then it's more likely, especially type 2 diabetes, that other family members are going to have that. But believe it or not, it's not just the genes. There are so many things that we're learning now that genes are just one part of the picture. It's actually the lifestyle. It is the environment around you, your body environment, but also the environment around you, that makes the biggest difference with whether those genes actually make the progression to diabetes or prediabetes. So your genes 1000% set up the milieu, but what we do in our lifestyle, what we do on a day-to-day basis is really what makes the biggest difference. So family history increases the risk, but it doesn't guarantee the outcome. So insulin resistance is the process, and what we eat, how we sleep, how we manage our stress, all of these things affect insulin resistance. So yes, certain people are at higher risk for developing insulin resistance, but 1000% the things that you do determine whether this insulin resistance shows up, and if it shows up, how quickly it progresses, and whether you actually can reverse it. So how we eat, how we sleep, how we move, how we manage our stress, the community around us, all of these things have an effect. The second one is that chronic stress is a real problem. Chronic stress literally changes our metabolism. So this is one of the things that we don't talk about enough in medicine. And I say it all the time. I probably was guilty of it myself in the past. We try to separate the brain from the body, but literally how we feel about our health, how we're feeling about life around us has an effect. In fact, there was just the Black Women's Health study that came out that showed that Black women have a higher incidence of stress, and this stress results in chronic disease risk. It results in higher sequelae. It results in insulin resistance progressing to prediabetes and diabetes, and then stroke and kidney disease. So this really is an issue. Healthcare workers, this woman that I was talking to yesterday, that healthcare workers have high stress. Unfortunately, we often put everybody above our own health. Women that are caregivers are at higher risk. Midlife women are at a higher risk. So chronic stress is really something that we cannot ignore. We can't just treat the food. We have to recognize that the stress around us can exacerbate this. It can worsen insulin resistance. It can cause glucose to be elevated, even if you're doing all the other things right. So managing stress is the second most important thing. The third one is this optimization thing that we focus on. So the thought is, the second we have the diagnosis of, or our blood sugar is a little bit elevated, is to optimize every, device. Continuous glucose monitors, our steps, we're tracking our activity, we're using everything. And you know what, believe it or not, we try to biohack everything. But measuring everything is not really the key. The key is really that we focus on, again, addressing these underlying causes. We don't want to optimize our blood sugar into oblivion. We really want to address the underlying insulin resistance. Often we try to optimize the blood sugar so much that we avoid the foods that are actually the ones that are going to help us heal. So yes, blood sugar is important, but it's the long-term blood sugar control that we need to worry about. It's not that we're never going to have a blood sugar spike. It's that we have a body that responds to the blood sugar spike by responding appropriately by releasing insulin and bringing it down. So that, again, those CGMs and the other things sometimes have us, number one, so stressed out. We're so worried about tracking everything that it's adding to our stress, but also often it has us avoid the things that actually can help heal. The other one is that we have to have the perfect workout. We have to work out, we have to lift heavy. We have to work out a perfect number of minutes every day. And movement is important. Don't get me wrong. It is one of the key lifestyle pillars. But you know what? If we work out in the morning and then we sit the rest of the day, that's actually worse for our health. So focusing on movement, building movement into your day. Where can you add movement? Where can you add a walk in the middle of the day? Can you make sure you have maybe a standing desk instead of a sitting desk? You make sure you're walking after meals. All of these things are so much more important than just scheduling the perfect workout. Yes, maintaining muscle and function is important, but moving throughout the day is one of the things that we are missing out on, and it is definitely having an effect on our long-term health. Okay, the fifth one, let's talk about protein. So the real nutrition conversation. What is it that we need to do to move the needle as far as insulin resistance? So contrary to popular belief, it is not avoiding carbohydrates and focusing on a higher protein diet. It actually is focusing on the quality of your diet, focusing on nutrient-dense foods. I talk about it all the time. Whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables. Those fruits and vegetables should be the foundation of what you consume. All of these foods are high in fiber. So what I tell people, what I tell my patients, what I tell my coaching clients, what I tell everybody is that to focus on the fiber. If you want to track any one thing, track the fiber grams. The goal is at least 25 grams of fiber a day. When we get above that, even better. From foods though. So again, we're always trying to hack and supplement things, but the key is really getting that fiber from whole unprocessed foods, because when we get it from those whole unprocessed foods support our gut health, they decrease inflammation, they support insulin, improving our insulin sensitivity, they just support our overall health. So focusing on whole unprocessed plant foods. I will add that yes, limiting ultra-processed foods ideally, but I would argue that it's more important to make sure that you're getting an abundance of whole and processed plant foods. That is the single most important lever in reversing insulin resistance, reducing your risk of developing prediabetes, and improving your long-term overall health. So it's not how much protein you're eating. The question is how much of your diet is coming from foods that are rich in fiber, rich in micronutrients, rich in phytonutrients and antioxidants. I say this all to say that if diabetes runs in your family, don't make the mistake of assuming that your future has already been written. Your genes matter, but your daily habits matter more. And so I think that it's a power that you can actually gain by listening and focusing on what you can do for your body overall. So I actually have a webinar coming up talking about more detail about how to reverse prediabetes. I encourage you to click the link below, sign up, and you can get your questions answered live with me. Okay, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.